What's up, awesome and loved and valued humans? Welcome to the Have You Heard podcast. I'm your host, MMA McDaniel, and I am so stoked that y'all are here. I hope that everybody had just the best Christmas. I hope you ate lots of good food. I hope your heart is also full with quality time with sweet people and just being reminded of how great of a gift God has given us in His Son Jesus. And guys, this is really exciting. We are talking about how to not go about your New Year's resolutions, putting a twist on it. And to do that, I am having my Uncle Josh on the podcast with us, who is a marriage and family therapist and owns a counseling center here locally in Virginia called Tasso Counseling. And this is going to be just a very rich conversation that I am so very much looking forward to, as we've had so many conversations throughout the years that have blessed me. So I hope this is one that I know I'll be blessed by, but also many people tuning in will too. So friends, grab your headphones and let's get into the word. Josh, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're in person with me.
I am glad to be here.
Oh, well, if we're talking about how to not go about our New Year's resolutions, I feel like it's very fitting for our first question to be, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Wow. I do, actually. This year, it's centered more around my personal relationship with the Lord. And I want to be intentional about my prayer time. That's one of the things that I have always struggled with, is my prayer time with the Lord. And so I'm trying to be intentional about having a morning prayer and an evening prayer. And it's an idea we grew up with. It's like, saying your prayers in the morning and saying them before bed at night. But I, somewhere along the way, overcomplicated them into being, I don't want to say pharisaical, but it's like I felt like they needed to have more substance. And instead of focusing just on that consistency in conversation with the Lord, I started to focus on making sure it had a lot of depth, and really missed out on the depth of the relationship in the process. So my resolution is to be consistent with that prayer time for Him, morning and evening prayer, a daily walk. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I know I found myself doing that with people even too. Like sometimes feel like, man, I didn't have a deep enough conversation with that person, and then I neglect how awesome the conversation was, though, what we did talk about.
Yep.
I've never even thought about that, though, in just conversation with the Lord.
Yes, because when you think about your interactions and your relationships with other people, if you only had deep conversations, that would be exhausting.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, you think about it in this way. If you get on an elevator and there's a person you don't know, and they just go right to the core, talking about the deep things in their life, you're probably like, oh, look, this is my stop. time to get off the elevator. It's too much because the relationship's not there.
Yeah.
The beauty of a deep relationship, a connected relationship, is not that you're deep all the time, is that you can go there when needed. And so sometimes it's the simple conversations, just the greetings, just the hi, just the, how's the football team doing? The things that don't really have much as far as purpose and meaning, but are fun parts of our life that help us get through.
Wow.
With the ability to go to the deep core when necessary. And so that's a beautiful connected relationship can operate and weave in and out of all areas without the boundary being there.
That's the best.
So, yes.
That's some of my favorite relationships with people, is the people that I can crack up over things about. Like, we just laugh over the silliest things, and then in a matter of moments we're talking about the deepest stuff, and
Yes.
it was just a flow.
Yes. The best explanation of that I've ever seen was an experience I had one time when I was in college, and one of our college mates had died in a tragic accident and had drowned. And so he was in our fraternity. He was the president, actually. And so we just all over the country came to their house in Oklahoma and was there for the funeral. And there was this night before the funeral where we all met at one of the guys that lived there at their house, and we were all in the living room, probably 80, 90 of us all together, and we just started telling what we called Randall stories, and the stories of Randall. And some of these stories were, serious and like meaningful. Some of them were absolutely ridiculous and hilarious, and we would laugh and laugh and laugh. And then there were times in which we would cry, and it was just, there was this maneuvering of not so serious to really, really deep and hard, and then back to the funny parts of that interaction. And it was just healing to be able to maneuver in and out of that without this is what this time is for. Share your story, and not this structured thing. It was just a dialogue, a discourse, a process of grieving a friend.
Wow, it just makes me think about how God is, yes, above all, He's the King of Kings. He is our Lord, and He's worthy of our fear and reverence. And at the same time, He's our friend, our best friend that sticks closer than a brother. And Romans 5 talks about how because of Christ, our friendship with God has been restored. And I think that sometimes we do forget that. We think that He's like so high and exalted, but not also fully present. And He's both.
Yes, but that's the thing, Emma. It's like there's so many times, and it's not just specific people that do this, but like all of us do this on some level, in some capacity. We tend to operate on extremes. So it's like either God is friend and that is who He is, or God is, overarching judge and He's ready to smite me. And it's like the reality is that He is an all-powerful creator and our friend. It's like Jesus is divine and human, and it's that idea in which we have to somehow separate or divide the sacred and the secular, when it's like, no, there's a combination of what's happening here. It's like it's a yes and instead of a either or. And so many times we want that extreme and we want that separation, when it's like, no, it's actually both. It's actually both, and being able to have that integration is a huge part of being able to see the whole picture, which is important. Anytime you're doing goal setting, you're having, working with relationships, you're about to start a new job, like it doesn't matter what it is. It's like if you are way too linear or too zeroed in on a particular focus, you'll miss out on that peripheral vision of all the other things that are going on that make this what it is.
Josh, that's so good. I want to build on that.
Okay.
So going linear, being zoned in on one thing, I think that happens in regard to New Year's resolutions, because we so badly want to start something new, but we're living in what we did yesterday.
Yes.
We're living in the things that we didn't do right. We're living in the things we wish we did differently. And therefore, the idea of having a fresh start sounds awesome. And it may even last for a month and a half, that new goal that we're striving for. But it fizzles out because mentally we're still in yesterday.
Yeah.
That's where we're zoned in. Can you talk to me about have you ever experienced setting a new goal and you couldn't step forward into it because you were in yesterday, and how that robbed you of being fully present?
Yeah, regret is a toughie, as I would like to say. It's a difficult one because there's so much of that painful process of experiencing what it's like to not be enough, and trying to prove oneself that you are enough. And the hard part about that is, if you are successful and you prove yourself that you are enough by doing whatever the thing is, you've set up this standard that in order to feel enough, I have to do the thing, right? And so if I don't do the thing, then I'm not enough. And so in a way, it's bad for you either way. It's like if you don't do it, then you're living in this regret because you didn't do it. If you do it, and then you're living in this expectation of having to perform in order to, have that knowledge that, hey, I did the thing. And either way, you've set yourself up for failure.
Y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. I just wanted to take this hot second and tell y'all about a paid sponsorship that I'm getting to do with Faithful Counseling, because life is hard and we weren't made to go about it alone. And Faithful Counseling is an online, worldwide available counseling service that is convenient and accessible no matter where you are globally. They allow counseling service to be available to you via video chat, instant messaging, or phone calls. And these are not just any counselors. These are licensed professional counselors with over 3,000 hours in their respective state. And so, guys, this is legit. And you can have 10% off of your first month's worth of counseling sessions by using my link, faithfulcounseling.com/MMA/. And the link is also provided below. That's faithfulcounseling.com/MMA/. I love y'all and I believe in you. Now let's get back to the show.
Which is weird because that's the totally opposite of what a resolution is supposed to be, right? And the idea of a new year, this new birth, this new thing, these new goals, these new resolutions, is the idea of creating something new that is positive for you in your life. It's
I love the way you put things.
Yeah, well, it's that idea of being able to have the right frame of mind of this is what I'm trying to achieve. If this is my goal, what am I trying to achieve by setting this goal? And then if this goal doesn't achieve those things, then it's lost its purpose and its meaning, right? And so if I'm going to have a resolution that I am then working towards, then I want even the process of working towards that resolution to be something that's life-giving. So that's where we get stuck, is the regret piece. So going back to what you said, it's like being able to move beyond that place of regret into a place of saying, okay, I'm going to be resolved to try to make these shifts and these changes. And usually what happens is we have an expectation of perfection instead of this idea that we're trying to shift into a new pattern of behavior. And those are two completely different concepts. Because if you have an expectation of perfection, then you might do well till about January 3rd. Maybe the 4th if you're, really killing it, right? But at some point you're going to wake up sore, or you're going to be frustrated about, you know how this is. Like when, okay, I'm going to go work out. I'm going to go to the gym. You go to the gym on December 29th. It's fine. Nobody's there, right?
It's still the holidays.
It's still the holidays. We have plenty of reasons not to go. You go there January 2nd. The parking lot's full. There's so many people there. There's not a treadmill open. There's that guy that's taking up the weights, and there's this guy that's resting on the bicep curl machine. And it's like, okay, I'm sitting here waiting the majority of the time and not getting this stuff done. And it's like any type of little barrier to that process of trying to make this shift and change can be a deterrent of you actually achieving the resolution that you've set out for. And so all of that stuff is trying to push back. And so whenever you are receiving that pushback, it's so easy to slide back into what we were before, the homeostasis of whatever that was, right? The problem is if we have an expectation of perfection, we have given ourselves no grace period or no grace to be able to do exactly at all. So it's like I have to sit here and wait on this guy to get off the machine, even though he's not working out. He's just sitting there resting, if I'm going to complete the task that I have set out before me. And we only are willing to do that for so long, and then once we've broken that cycle and we're no longer perfect in that, then it's like 9 times out of 10 the resolution's broken, and we're not sticking with it. There's a reason why gyms sell their memberships at the beginning of the year, right? And there's a reason why whenever you go work out in March, it's pretty clear. If you could just make it through to March, you can use that machine without any interruption. And it's because there's an expectation of perfection. And whenever that is not there, then we're living in the regret, or we're living in well, that's just not who I am, or some sort of justification to make it okay. And then we return back to the old pattern of behavior.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true. We miss out on the journey
Exactly.
that it is, and we crave this instant gratification of, okay, I want to get stronger, I want to be this version of myself, and if it doesn't happen within this period of time, then I guess it wasn't for me, or I guess I'm not cut out for it, or maybe next year. And it's a different mindset that happens. And so how do we go from living in regret to learning from our past mistakes and applying that knowledge that we've gained from that experience and making a change?
So we're talking about a paradigm shift, a complete paradigm shift, and being able to look at this differently. Because a lot of times, how to make this make sense? The idea of a double bind is that you're not going to be able to move forward either way, right? If you're successful, you've set up an expectation that you can't keep.
You can't fail.
Right? Or if you've messed it up, then you've broken it.
So why keep going?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that double bind is keeping us locked in place from being able to actually create a new resolution in our life to do something more, to do something different. So go back and ask yourself, like, what is the purpose of this resolution? Like, what am I trying to do? Because the interesting thing is like, if you truly ask yourself that, I would be willing to bet that none of you get to that determination of saying, the purpose of this resolution is for me to be perfect.
Yeah.
But that the expectation is there. And so how we answer that is we have to create a new paradigm of being able to create these resolutions in, knowing that you're probably going to blow it at some point. I used the example earlier whenever we were talking of, what if you were to say, I am going to work out every single day this year.
Not missing a single day.
Not missing a single day.
365.
Yes. And like anybody could look at that and like, whoa, that's serious, right?
Yeah.
That's a big goal. And they could totally respect that. The problem is we have set ourselves up to fail right from the get-go. Do you remember why?
I think I remember that you were telling me that you don't really block out spaces of permission for you to not work out or to not meet that goal. And because you don't give yourself permission, there's like this judgment that you have over yourself if you do miss a day.
Yes. So that judgment of ourselves, the hard part of that is like, how do we get around that? And the way we usually get around that is by justifying in some way. And I'm using some extreme example here. Okay, all right, we've decided that we're going to work out every single day this year. We're committed no matter what. We're going to the gym. We can do this, And then your kid gets sick. Or the babysitter calls and they can't come because they're sick. Or, heaven forbid, you have a death in the family. There's a funeral. You're having to work overtime. Name it. There's any number of situations that happen in life that throw our routine completely out of whack. And yet, because I've made this resolution, right, like this is the way it's going to be, this is how I'm going to do this, I have left zero room for me to be able to maneuver under that. Now, I understand the hesitation that people have with allowing a room to maneuver under it, because we're going to I don't don't have to go, right? Like if we allow ourselves any room, and that's why we try to overcompensate by saying being strict on these things. But it has the exact opposite effect, and the reason is because the paradigm is the same, right? And so because I've set this expectation that I must do this, as soon as something happens, and it could be something crazy, ridiculous, a death in the family, a funeral, that every person on earth looks at and say, no, of course you're not going to go work out. No, now of course that makes sense that you wouldn't do that. And you'd be completely justified in not doing the action that you had set out. Just that moment. Like let's say for the rest of the year you were completely successful, completely perfect. At the end of the year, what are you going to say?
I didn't do it that one
That's
day.
it. Yeah, there was that one day. And it makes sense why I didn't do it, but, it wasn't really the full year, and I'm going to try it again next year.
And you totally forget the 364 days you did show up.
Exactly. And so the reason why I'm talking about a paradigm shift is because all of that expectation, that performance, all of it is building on this idea that in order for me to get the thing that I'm trying to achieve, this is how I have to do it. And that's not true. Think of it like bending metal, forging metal. I have zero experience as a blacksmith, so y'all take that into account.
We need to have Uncle Zach on here.
We do. Have a full uncle podcast. Right?
Yeah.
Be able to look at it. It's like whenever we're forging metal, the idea is like, okay, I have this shape in my mind of what I want this to look like. And in order to get this shape, I'm going to have a process that happens of heating the metal up to a very high temperature, of bending the metal, of hammering the metal, it having cooled off, reheating the metal, looking at it, hammering again, bending again. There's this process that's taking place to be able to achieve the shape or to achieve the object that you're trying to build here. That's the idea. Whenever we're looking at resolutions, it's not I'm going to add this new thing and it's going to make me this. And it does not work that way. It's like, okay, how can I improve myself a little bit more than what I was yesterday? Okay, what if I'm at 45%? What would it take for me to get at 45.02%? What would that look like?
So good.
Right? Because that is the idea of what growth looks like. And we accept that in every other capacity of our life. When we talk about education, do we expect first graders to get all the information within that first year, be done? All right, now go grab a career? No. It's like, okay, we're going to talk about this layer of math. And now you're going to do this in second grade. And then we're going to up it in third grade, do some multiplication. Now we're going to do a little bit more heavier concept. There's this idea that's built in of growth, of this gradual growth. It's the same thing, with investing. Do we expect to, put our money into an investment and then look and say, okay, there it is. My investment is mature and I just take it out? No. Yeah. There's like an understanding of, look, there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. Any given day, you look at the stock market and you could either freak out or say, hey, man, things are going great. Depending on the day,
so true.
Right? And so, but we want to look at, okay, but what are the 10-year trends, the 20-year trends? There's some ups and downs, but let's look at this as a whole. Yet we do not do that as our own individual selves, right? We have this expectation that, okay, see, name, change, done. Instead of understanding that there's a see, name, change, look, adjust. I think in our previous conversation I had talked about, this idea of aiming.
Oh yeah, that's so good.
Right? The idea, okay, I'm going to look, and where do I want to shoot? I want to shoot over there. So then I'm going to aim over there, and I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to go look and assess where I shot. Then I'm going to say, okay, wait, I need to make an adjustment left or right, and aim the sights, zero it in.
Yeah.
Right? And then I'm going to shoot again, aim, shoot again. Look, I'm a little bit left now. Okay, I'm going to adjust again. There's this idea of identifying goal, shooting, and then adjusting the trajectory in every aspect of our life. And yet we have this expectation that I want to hit that target over there. And focus, hit target. I didn't hit the target. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of shooting at those targets anyway. I should have known better. I don't even know why I was expecting to hit it. And we just rail ourselves with those thoughts of not good enough. And it keeps us from being able to make the shifts and changes. And that is what a resolution is.
What's up, y'all? I love the holidays, as I'm sure that y'all do too. And one of my favorite things about the holidays is, yes, you get to receive a lot of fun things, but I love even more so the beauty of giving. And I have an incredible opportunity for y'all to give that I believe will be world-changing. I've gotten to partner with Compassion International, which is a nonprofit organization that has partnered with local churches for the purpose of relieving kids all over the world out of poverty. Y'all, this is an incredible opportunity that we have to sponsor kids and help them not only have food and get an education and have clothing, but also have the opportunity to hear the gospel and help them grow and develop to be all of who God has called them to be. If you go to the link below, which is compassion.com/Emma, you can see pictures of tons of different kids that out of these groups of kids that desperately need our help, you can choose a child, therefore you know what they look like. And not only are you helping them by all of those means across the world, but you're also able to personally invest into their lives and stay in touch to them via letters, where you can encourage them and build them up and know that there's somebody across the world who's thinking of them, praying for them, and they care about them. This is an incredible opportunity that, like I said, I believe will be world changing. So guys, the link is below, compassion.com/Emma, and you can donate today, just $38 a month. That's all. I love you.
Resolution is the word I use whenever I'm working with marriages and couples. Whenever they're having an argument or a fight, it's like, okay, what's the purpose of the fight? What's the purpose of the argument? And, many will say, well, to be right? If she would just listen to me, this is obviously what we need to do. I want to prove my point. Exactly. I have a point. Just listen. Right? And we have this focus of like, this is what I want to do. I want to prove myself right. But that whole idea is messed up because the focal point is on self and not on the idea of the relationship. It goes back to the idea of the paradigm. If we're going to shift our understanding of what the resolution is for, we have to change how we approach it. If in our relationship, if we're going to work together, then we have to change how we argue. It's like if I'm going to identify, well, the purpose of this argument is to identify the best choice of where our kids go to school. And it's like, okay, well, why did you come up with that conclusion? What is it that you're taking into account? What's going on there? And like, if at any point pride is a part of that process, it's not going to work. That humility has to be there. It's like taking on the understanding and the concept that I could be wrong is important.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to create better, new, then refinement is a part of the process. Right? Back to the blacksmithing analogy, right?
Yeah.
If we're going to get to the shape that we want, refinement is a part of the process. If we're going to, get that metal to its purest form, the refining process is a part of it. It's the same thing with a relationship. It's the same thing with us individually. That understanding of the refinement process. But so many times we find ourselves in a place of judgment. It's like, if she would just listen to me, then this wouldn't be an issue. But she won't. And therefore we're stuck. Or if I could just do this better, then I wouldn't be struggling so much with this sin, with this particular struggle, with this particular desire that I want to see happen. But I can't. because I'm stuck, I'm not good enough. And you live in that place of regret of what you're not, or that regret of what you are, instead of actually seeing the process of what that looks like. It's one thing to understand, okay, the idea of 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 17.
I was reading that this morning.
Right? We are a new creation. This is who we are. That's our identity, right? Yeah. It's one thing to be able to know that this is my identity. It's another thing to live in that identity. So that has been identified. What does it look like to live into that place, live in it? Have you ever read the book Goliath Must Fall?
No.
By Louis Giglio?
No.
Yes, you need to pick it up.
Okay.
It is an amazing book. Not anything overly complicated as far as concept goes, but I absolutely love what he does in there in the reference towards David and Goliath. Because so many times we look and we read that story, we hear a sermon about that story, and it's like, okay, here's David, and he took these 5 stones and he faced this huge giant, right? And you too can face the giant in your life. Yeah. Exactly. So it's like, okay, what he does is he says, no, you're not David. Jesus is David. You are that scared soldier that's been hiding behind that tent for the last 2 weeks. That's you, okay? You're the one that won't come out every time Goliath is crying out and you're hiding under the tent. That's you. Yeah, and being able to see that shift, all of a sudden, it's like when you see David take on the giant in your life, slay the giant in your life, what then happened to the soldiers? They were emboldened.
Yeah.
They didn't stay behind the tents. They picked up their swords. They ran right in, right? They acted because of what David had done. It's the same idea whenever we look at and be able to see Christ at work within us. If we are this new creation, if we're living in that place of being a new creation, these are the decisions that are moving us towards acting that out. If I make a decision, I want to resolve to do these new things. It's not an expectation of perfection. Yeah. It's I'm not operating in order to prove myself. I'm not doing this thing in order to have value. I'm doing this because I have value. And it's in light of the value that Christ has already identified. It's already determined. It's already there. It's predetermined. And I'm living out of that value that's been shown to me. And it's like, so good. The book itself, I
have to go.
Louis does a great job of explaining it. There's
Louis.
like a DVD series where he goes into more detail. It's a really good read, a really good resource for anybody that's looking to really tackle the giants in their life and understanding that this is not giants that you have to tackle. Christ has tackled these things. And to be able to live under that promise is a completely different paradigm shift. And so whenever we talk about New Year's resolutions, and like take mine for instance, morning prayer, evening prayer. And I just told you that for some reason, I love the Lord with all my heart, but prayer has been one of those things that I am not good at. I just am not good at it. And I don't know why. I have no reason to be able to tell you, here's the reason. I don't know. It's one of those areas that I've really struggled with. What's the likelihood that that struggle is going to go away because I have decided that this year will be different?
Not very likely.
Not very likely.
Yeah.
I'm already knowing that I'm probably going to fail at this. I'm probably going to blow this. And so there's probably listeners out there, people that are watching this and are like, well, why in the world do we even make these resolutions? And I get it, but go back to the paradigm shift. Why are we making the resolution? Is it to create the new suddenly in our life? Or is it to create a new goal in which we are trying to aim, shoot, adjust, aim, shoot, adjust, aim, shoot, adjust? Like that is the process of resolution. And so in that, the failure is a part of it.
So beautiful.
And so it's asking the questions like, why was today different? Why did I not pray today? I didn't get up at my normal time. I wasn't feeling well, or the dog had to be fed right then. There are different aspects of it. It's like, okay, was this me? Or was this the situation in life? Because even that has completely different ramifications, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to understand what brought about the failure is a huge part of being able to adjust and continue to create the new.
Oh, it makes me think of just the whole sanctification process, like being conformed to look more and more like Jesus, and eventually whenever he returns and we're with him face to face, like it will be full. We will be full, like glorified with the Lord. It's called glorification, I think. But that doesn't happen until we are with the Lord, and this journey here in our earthly bodies has come to an end. And so even in the concept of New Year's resolutions, like I want to always continue to set goals, and I want to always like set forth things that I can improve on, and things I can lean into, and things that I can sharpen and grow from and learn from, because life in and of itself is a process of looking more like Jesus. That God promises he's going to finish that work in me, but it didn't happen the moment that I surrendered my life to Christ. That's when it started.
Yeah.
And that just that, like wanting that instant gratification of like, I don't want to struggle anymore. I don't want to wrestle with this sin anymore. I don't want but it's like, I'm so glad you don't want that anymore. But lean into the process of continuing to surrender it to the Lord. And that leads me to something I want to talk about is forgiveness. Because we're talking about how our identity in Christ is now a new creation, and God has forgiven us of all of our sins, cleansed us of all our unrighteousness. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that maybe we do actually take him at his word in that, but I don't know if we actually forgive ourselves, right, or we think that we actually grasp the depth of what that even means, and therefore it's hard to step forward into those new things that we're wanting to grow in.
Yep.
So I want to talk about forgiveness because I feel like you're going to share some really good stuff.
Well, so a couple things there. So let's set this up, and then we'll move into the forgiveness conversation, because it's hard to talk about forgiveness without referencing at least a little bit with resentment towards other people versus regret of ourselves. And I know we've talked a little bit about regret, and I want to stay in there because those are usually the things that keep us from being intentional with the resolutions that we have. Mm-hmm. But I would be doing a disservice if I didn't at least touch on the resentment piece as well.
Cool.
The other side of that is the idea of this process and where that comes from. Because one of the things you talked about is like, I don't want to struggle with this sin anymore, right? Mm-hmm. It's like this idea of, God, take this thorn from me. Yet, what did he tell Paul? My grace is sufficient, right? Yeah. So it's like, okay, hold on a second. We don't know what that's referencing. We have no idea what the thorn is. There's a lot of people that have different ideas of what that might be. But it's clear that whatever it is, it was causing an issue, and he wanted it gone. And God's like, nope, not yet. It's serving a purpose. And so going back to this idea of temptation, and it's like, why would God allow me to be tempted, right? Let's get into some sketchy areas here, right? Like, what if the temptation itself was serving a purpose? And a couple reasons why I go to this idea. Number one, Matthew 4. Mm-hmm. Jesus is being tempted. At first look, this looks like the most ridiculous waste of time that Satan can do, right? Like this, like Satan, there has to be something better you can do with your time than try to tempt the Son of God, right? Like this looks ridiculous. And yet there was something about this temptation that was drawing to Jesus. If not, then like it would not, under definition, be a temptation, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, the process of that temptation there was important. for him to go through. There's a lot of different reasons probably why that is so, and a lot of information about the temptation of Jesus. But I just want to just address the fact that the process itself was there, okay? And then link that to us. 1 Corinthians 10:13. Right? We know that verse. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man.
Yeah.
Right? And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but will provide a way out so that you might stand under it. Right? Okay, so there's lots of stuff there. It's like, okay, so he's so not. I'm like, so he's not taking that away, right? It's like, oh, okay, I'll keep that from you. But the temptation itself has some sort of purpose. Jesus himself is tempted, and it talks about after the temptation, the angels came and ministered to him and strengthened him, right? He had just fasted for 40 days. There was a lot of weakness there physically. So there was some sort of purpose of happening there. And then we look at 1 Corinthians 10, and we see he's not just taking the temptation away. We look over here at Paul, I think in 2 Corinthians when he talks about the thorn in his flesh, and God's just not going and plucking it out, and there you go, dealt with. He's not. All better. No, it's still there. Yeah. And so it's like, okay, hold on a second. There's something about the struggle that's important. It's something about the struggle that's important. And so if we look at resolution and say there shouldn't be a struggle, we're missing a huge piece.
Wow.
So let's go back to the regret. Okay? The regret piece is this idea that there should be no struggle. And the fact that I'm struggling is something bad about me. Something wrong with me. Something not good enough about me. If I was up to snuff, then there wouldn't be a struggle. This wouldn't be an issue, obviously, right? But we're taking this idea of the struggle and saying that it's not important, that it doesn't play a part, when everything we're seeing in Scripture is not pointing to that.
There's so much in Scripture
it's
about
so much.
We boast all the more in our suffering, and so you may be mature and complete. Consider it all joy when you face trials of many kinds. That's all throughout the Word. Yeah,
Acts 5 is one of the most confusing scripture. I always thought it was one of the, because it talks about I forget 5:21. It's somewhere in chapter 5 of Acts where it says the disciples were flogged, and then they went away rejoicing.
Rejoicing.
Wait a minute.
To be considered worthy of suffering for the name.
Yes. And so being able to say, okay, there's something to this struggle idea. And so if we're going to look at regret and this idea of forgiveness, we have to look at it through a new lens, a new paradigm, instead of this devaluing of self whenever we don't do, or whenever we even face struggle, or we're regretful of the things that we've faced or done. And that's why I wanted to go back and kind of lay some groundwork there.
I'm really glad you did.
So, with that in mind, there's some sort of purpose in the struggle. Let's move forward into this idea of resentment and regret, because both of those things are key factors whenever we start talking about forgiveness.
I love this conversation.
Wow. So, regret, we've talked about before, because regret is focused which way?
Me.
Yeah, it's focused inward. It's focused towards me. It's focused on what I should have done, I shouldn't have done, I could have done better, I didn't do good enough, all of those things, right? Resentment is focused
on you.
Yeah, it's outward. Yeah. And so it's like the things that others have done to me. And it's focused on that. Yes. Yeah. So the resentment is usually that first key piece that leads to bitterness, which usually leads to loneliness, which usually leads to depression, right? And we get into that cycle. And it's just a nice, yucky soup, of grossness that is.
Nobody likes it, but so many find themselves in it.
They find themselves in it because of the world being fallen.
Yeah.
Right? And so
Yeah.
so the hard part is you could do all the things right. Does it mean that you're not going to hurt? Right?
Yeah.
Like, ask Jesus, right?
He literally was perfect.
And what happened? That didn't work out too well for him, right? Like,
Yeah.
we saw how that impacted. And he, even in Scripture, he references and says, what, if you follow me, this is what you can expect. There's going to be hardship. There's going to be pain. Sometimes you're not going to have a place to lay your head. This is where this goes.
Yeah.
Yet, I don't know, there's probably many places where this comes from. There's this expectation of kind of the prosperity gospel type idea that if I give my life to the Lord, then everything should be good. And if things aren't going good, then then maybe there's something I didn't do. Or maybe there's something I should have prayed more. I should have read my Bible more. I wasn't nice to this person. This idea that this plus this should equal this.
Yeah.
That is not how that works, right? And we've talked about that with the difference of Jonah and Jeremiah. We've talked about that with the difference of looking at all the different apostles and their different personalities, and how Jesus didn't just choose all the learned men. You got fishermen, you got tax collectors, you got people from all different walks of life that he's chose for reasons of connection, for reasons of relationship, because the people that are out there are going to relate to them differently. So, going back to this idea of struggle or regret, have you ever had this experience, Emma, on your podcast, where you start talking about some of the things that you personally have struggled with, and then in the comments they're like, oh my word, I'm so glad you talked about this, because this is something I've been struggling with. I thought I was the only one.
Yes.
So that is what we call points of connection. There are relational things that can happen through struggle, through hardship.
Y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. I just wanted to take this hot second and tell y'all about a paid sponsorship that I'm getting to do with Faithful Counseling, because life is hard and we weren't made to go about it alone. And Faithful Counseling is an online, worldwide available counseling service that is convenient and accessible no matter where you are globally. They allow counseling service to be available to you via video chat, instant messaging, or phone calls. And these are not just any counselors. These are licensed professional counselors with over 3,000 hours in their respective state. And so, guys, this is legit. And you can have 10% off of your first month's worth of counseling sessions by using my link, faithfulcounseling.com/MMA/. And the link is also provided below. That's faithfulcounseling.com/MMA/. I love y'all and I believe in you. Now let's get back to the show.
One of the most hard but beautiful things that I experienced this past year was the relationships that I have with friends of mine that have experienced deep sadness and grief, or loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
And whenever, my dad passed away, your papa passed away, that moment, I had one individual that just came and sat with me and didn't say a word, just sat there. And I knew that they knew, and he knew that I knew that he knew, and we didn't say a word. Didn't have to. Because there wasn't a good thing to say.
Yeah.
So it wasn't there. But the importance was not in what was said. The importance was in the connection of the relationship, the experience of what was taking place there. And that experience was hard, not fun. Yet I was closer to this person than ever before through that experience. And I know that's hard for us to accept, but the idea that hardship itself has purpose. So when we get into the question of forgiveness, whenever we're focusing forgiveness outwardly because of resentment that we have towards other people, or forgiveness inwardly because of the regret that we're holding ourselves captive to. There's going to be a difficult decision that you have to make to surrender that which you feel and do the thing that you know is right. And it's not even about right, really. It's more about that you know is good for you. Because if you allow your actions to be dictated by your feelings, you will never get out of this loop. You won't. If you're waiting, if you're in a place of depression and you're waiting to feel better about going and interacting with other people, it will not happen. If you're waiting to feel better about going outside, going and exercising and being involved and engaging in interactions and relationships with others at work and in your social life, like, it's not going to happen. And so you have to intentionally do what you know you need to do, even though you don't feel like doing it. Yeah,
that's like even just with the Lord, like, if I don't feel like opening up the Word today, if I act on that, it can get like it's not gonna benefit your walk with the Lord. It's just in the concept of faith. I think sometimes we think, if I'm not feeling it, then something's wrong, and that's just not the case. That feelings will come, and that's awesome, but on the days that I'm not feeling it, that doesn't mean that I don't need to lean into it.
So the name of your podcast is Faith Comes from Hearing, right?
Yeah. Have you heard from that
have
verse?
You heard, yeah. This idea of hearing, this idea of faith coming from that hearing. It doesn't say faith comes from you feeling good about what you're hearing, or faith feels good about hearing what you agree with, or faith, I feel good about the faith that I'm receiving because of how I'm hearing. It's just faith through hearing. And who knows what condition you are in that state. It's like sometimes I approach the altar in a place I'm like, yes, I'm so excited to be able to give this to the Lord. Sometimes I approach the altar and I feel like I don't even deserve to be there. And so, like, that state is irregardless. What is important is the fact that I am there.
Yeah, you showed up.
You showed up. And so, forgiveness. What is forgiveness? Any ideas?
Oh, it's funny how you use a word all the time, but then whenever somebody asks you to define it,
this is why I asked this.
How do I explain to you? I feel like it's almost, the word that comes to my mind is a release. Like I'm no longer holding this against you. I'm no longer holding this resentment within my heart. So release comes to mind.
So let's stick with this idea of release and no longer holding. Why would you let go of something and release something? Why would you do that?
Because it's not benefiting you to hold it, and it's unnecessarily heavy.
So it's not benefiting you. What else? Let's say there is a boiling pot of hot water and you're holding it. What is it doing?
It's burning you.
It's burning you, right?
Yeah.
There's pain in the process of holding that. And so maybe I'm putting this down because I don't want to hurt my hands anymore, right? So the reason why I ask about forgiveness is so many people hold on to this idea that they can't forgive because that other person doesn't deserve it. And forgiveness has zero to do with the other person deserving it. Forgiveness has zero to do with you deserving it. That piece is important, because if we're waiting for the other person to somehow prove themselves,
or to feel it,
you see where I'm going with this, it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So there's this idea of understanding that forgiveness is something that is healthy for me. And so when I forgive others or I forgive myself, there's an act of surrender, almost like a cutting out of the old dead wood or the infection that is hurting, and setting it outside so that healing can take place. And that's the importance of forgiveness. The iniquity, the sin that is there, Jesus did what he did, creates an opportunity for the blood to atone so that we might be forgiven.
Yeah.
Forgiveness creates opportunity for healing. Why do we need healing? Right? Because there's damage there. There's hardship there. There's stuff that we have been impacted by or affected by in our life, whether it's by others or it's by ourselves, that has created this destructive thought pattern and has kept us away from being able to allow ourselves to operate in this place of healing. So you want to wreck your resolutions real quick. Create a paradigm where you can't mess up. And if you do mess up, you're going to blame yourself for not being good enough in some way and not forgive yourself and hold it against you. Or take that and justify it by pointing the finger at other people and continuing to have that resentment towards others. You will not stick to any type of resolution.
That's the way to not go about
that is
your New Year's resolution.
Yes.
Man.
So this idea of forgiveness, let's bring this home, as it were. Okay. So whenever we're looking at forgiveness in and of itself, to be able to move towards a place of having a resolution so that we can work to improve ourselves and continue to grow. Growth. That's the focus. Forgiveness, as we see it, needs to be a place of healing, whether it's inward or outward. We talked a little bit about the two words that are there in the Bible used specifically for healing, for forgiveness, salach and nasa.
Guys, this is really cool.
So I want to first off say I am not a Hebrew scholar, so don't butcher me for the pronunciations of those particular words. I got almost all this information from Worthington's book, Forgiveness and Reconciliation, and also Dr. Van Rackley, which was one of my professors at Harding. He also did his dissertation on forgiveness, and the understanding of these two words were key in being able to get to a place of healing.
Get ready, guys. This is good.
I agree, because it was just earth-shattering for me in how I saw the need for healing and forgiveness. Nasa is this idea of forgiveness that we offer each other, and also God offers us, but there's a remembering of what's happened, what's happening that takes place. Salach is this idea, and in the Bible it's only attributed to God. But this idea of wiping the slate clean, washed as white as snow, right? It's this idea of forgetting. It's gone. Yet we've identified so many times whenever we have to forgive that we need to do what?
We forgive and forget.
We forgive and forget.
Or is what we say.
Right. But do we do that? Like, who's forgetting, right? Nobody. We're remembering. That's a piece of it. And so instead of this idea of forgive and forget, it's this idea of forgiving even though we don't forget. What does that look like? How do we do that and still move into a place of healing, knowing the things that have happened to us or the things that we have done?
Yeah.
And it goes back to this idea of Peter, whenever he's asking Jesus, how many times do I forgive? 7 times? He's trying to get a number. We were laughing earlier because
Okay.
there's some guy, Jonah over there that's been cheating on his taxes or
He's
something.
been getting on
He's
Peter's
been getting
nerves.
yeah. There's something he's doing that's getting on Peter's nerves, and Peter's like, okay, look. I mean, I forgave him 6 times. Am I good? I'm trying to follow along here, but how many times I'm doing this?
Uh-huh.
And Jesus says 70 times 7. And it's not about a number. The key piece to that is like, Peter, you're going to remember every single time. Peter remembered the other 6 times. That's why he's asking about the seventh, right?
Yeah.
It didn't change the fact that he did forgive. It didn't mean that he didn't forgive. What Jesus is speaking about is saying there's something important about the relationship with this individual that creates the process of forgiveness as a part of the relationship. And that's hard. That's the struggle. Back to the struggle
You won't
piece
have the
of it.
best feels.
No, and it's going to be hard. But there is something, going back to Jonah, right? There's something that Jonah's struggling with that has got him by the neck. And then it's not letting go. And Jesus is saying, Peter, don't abandon him now. I know it's 7 times, but it's got him. You know how it is whenever you're struggling with something and you're trying to make it right and you keep messing it up. Don't leave him in that. And while we can understand that in the concept of us trying to support others, even though that might be hard, when it comes to us looking inwardly to ourselves, how willing are we to be just as gracious, just as forgiving, with our own struggle of whatever it is that has us by the neck, even so much to so that we're trying to create New Year's resolutions around them.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I want people to be able to hear from this is give yourself some grace. Not in order to make it okay when you mess up, but to be able to create a completely new paradigm of changing that narrative from perfection and expectation of perfection to a bending the metal or a setting your sights on that goal and doing what is necessary to hit the target and making that growth, those changes that create that growth in your life. It's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process. It's a process. I'll leave you with this. One of my favorite authors of all time is Brandon Sanderson. He's a fantasy author. And one of his books series that he does is the Stormlight Archive series. And there's a phrase that he has in there that is spoken throughout the whole series. And it's journey before destination. Journey before destination. And that idea is key to this intentionality that you're doing whenever you approach and set a resolution. It's journey before destination. It's not about making that resolution just happen.
Yeah.
It's the journey of what that resolution in that new year is going to do, what that's going to look like throughout the year.
Yeah.
And so to really look at that in December and say, wow, March and April were rough. Why? What was going on? Picked it back up in May. Man, there was huge progress in this. What was I doing that was helpful? It's asking those questions that creates the change that you've been seeking for the whole time. And that's it.
That's it. This has blessed me, and I feel like y'all may have hopped on here and thought it would be a conversation about, okay, where am I going to travel this year? What foods am I going to make sure I try? What diet am I going to get on? What workouts am I going to commit to? And like all of those types of typical New Year's resolution conversations. But I wanted to go a different route here, because you can talk about all the new plans and all the new goals that you have, but if we don't address these root things that actually enable us to step into those things with a healthy mindset, in a way that honors the Lord and honors ourself and is productive and has longevity, then if we don't address these root issues, then that's not going to be possible, and it's going to last maybe a month and a half.
Maybe.
And so whatever new goals that you have, I hope that this podcast equipped you to do it enthusiastically unto the Lord at a root level, at a heart level, at a deep mind level. I hope it helps you grow in health as you step into this new year. Y'all are so stinking loved. And if you are watching on YouTube, be sure and give thumbs up, subscribe, comment down below what your New Year's resolution is and how this encouraged you to step into it in a healthy way. And also, share with us what content you'd like us to lean into in this new year. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, be sure and download, rate, review, share it with all your people, because I'm sure all your people are thinking through what their New Year's is going to look like and how they're going to step into it. So I hope it blesses them. And on Instagram, you can follow us at HaveYouHeard_podcast. And you can follow me at 1 Corinthians 13_love. I love y'all so much. Me and Uncle Josh love y'all so much. Josh, thank you for being on the podcast with me.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
It was so fun, and his
Yes.
voice is so calming, so I hope it soothed you. Y'all have a good one.